It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Anyone can bake bread, but it takes something special to rock it. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast. This episode is brought to you by Dave's Killer Bread, champions of killer taste, killer texture, along with killer nutrition. Dave's Killer Bread is the organic bread you can eat on its own if you want to. Add your favorite sandwich fixings, and you've got yourself an elevated eating experience that you won't find anywhere else. So make sure you visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more and do what my family and I do. Look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your local grocery store. That's Dave's Killer Bread, bread amplified.
The NHL's on its All-Star hiatus, but the newsreel doesn't stop, and your work as a fantasy hockey GM doesn't either. That's why you're tapped into your source. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast Saturday special. Todd McLellan done in LA, Sean Monahan on his way to Winnipeg, and our top 6-1 fantasy veterans in the game. Let's tap in.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music, and you know what time it is. It's time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, here for a little Saturday special to make sure all of your fantasy hockey news and angles are covered. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers and shout out to everyone holding Steele and I down over the last 2 years. Couldn't have done it without y'all. Smash that 5-star review and subscribe button. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Happy Super Bowl to all who is celebrating. It is a big week right now. New customers join today and get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Steele, my goodness me, just when we thought we were not going to have too much to talk about, just our top countdown, 6-1, which is going to be spicy enough because these veterans are the kinds of pieces that you need to peg to fill out your team, because just like one that I'll talk about in Alex Ovechkin, they can go cold in this end of their career. So we'll talk about that, our rest of our countdown, but we got to get to business off the top. Sean Monahan is now a Winnipeg Jet, and Vancouver and Winnipeg have responded to what they might have to go through in Edmonton, Steele, and I want to talk about that. I think these two teams recognize their holes up the middle and have addressed that. So we'll address that. Todd McLellan, though. Let's start there because I think there's not as much to cover. He's done in LA. This team has been bad lately. What's your take on what's going on in LA before we get to Monahan and our countdown? What do you see this LA Kings team doing in the second half?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, to be honest. And personally, I think the firing of Todd McLellan was a little bit unjustifiable. I understand that they're going through a rough spell right now, and they've really struggled over the last 10 to 15 games. But I don't think that has anything or has a lot to do with Todd McLellan's coaching, because he got them to this point earlier in the season.
Sure.
We go back to Drew Doughty's comments just the other day where he was where he was focusing majority on the players and not living up to expectations and standards of team play, playing for themselves, padding the stats, as we like to call it in basketball.
Yep.
And that's what we were seeing. And that's what was being showcased to a lot of the fans out there. They would get 2-goal leads and end up costing the game because they were looking for more points.
What was he calling it? Cookie time? They thought it was cookie time?
Yeah, it was cookie time.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
That's exactly what it was. You know, they weren't playing team hockey. They weren't playing focused hockey. And, again, I think someone left a comment on the YouTube channel the other day. The common denominator has been Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now, I don't want to fully blame him, but if you go to Columbus, Winnipeg, and now the LA Kings, there seems to be turmoil wherever he goes. So, again, I'm not fully blaming Pierre-Luc Dubois. A lot of the players need to be a lot better than what we've seen over the last 15 games, but I don't think it was justifiable to fire Todd McLellan when the team is still 23-15-10 on the season. And it's the first time all season that they've even dropped out of the top 3 in their respective division. They're still in a wild card spot. So for me, I think it was a little unjustifiable. I think you would continue to ride it out maybe a little bit longer over the NHL All-Star break when they come back. But after that, if it continued, maybe you fire him then. But for me, it was just unjustifiable.
I'm here for this take, and I actually tend to agree with you because I think you know my approach to in-season coach firings. I tend to hang this on the players 9 times out of 10. That's just me. I think in this situation, given that they are 3-8-6 over their last 17, I understand the response to the poor play. I just don't think that this was the move. Also, Rob Blake, the GM in LA, only about 2 weeks ago said that he had ruled out an in-season coaching change. So that's number 2. And number 3, all of a sudden, Steele, this is the 6th NHL coach to be fired this season, along with Lane Lambert, DJ Smith, Jay Woodcroft, Dean Evison, your old former boy, and Craig Berube. Something tells me at least one of those names, especially Craig Berube, could be back behind a bench very, very soon. Anyway, quick sidebar. But this LA Kings team has to turn it around in a hurry. I'm with you, though, in terms of they're still very much alive in that division. They need to turn it around in Pierre-Luc Dubois. Another good point. You're on fire, by the way. This Kings club started the year. Hold on, let me pull that up because I had that number up as well. 27-4 to open the year. We were all over these peripheral fantasy pieces. We were loving that Victor Arvidsson, Deneau, Trevor Moore line. Arvidsson once again comes up, Steele. One of those pieces that, sure, 45, 55-point man, but he is like the glue that holds that bottom 6 together. And that was one of the biggest strengths of that LA Kings team last year, was their ability to roll 3 effective lines, and they haven't been doing that. However, interesting tie-in into this Winnipeg Jets club, because on the other foot, they are cruising right now. Now, let's take a look at this Sean Monahan news, Steele. Aside from what I want your take on this, now you have, in a matter of days, the Vancouver Canucks and the Winnipeg Jets, 2 teams that are very much going for it this year, adding center depth, players up the middle. Because why? They know they're most likely going to have to go through that red-hot Edmonton Oilers team who, and here I want your take on this, in my opinion, have the best center depth in the league, and I don't think this is a bold take. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, and Connor McDavid up the middle are the best trio, and I think that's what you're seeing from these 2 teams, responding to the team they might have to go through in a matter of months.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and obviously Winnipeg Jets trying to make a response to what the Vancouver Canucks did with Elias Lindholm. And the top 6 now for both Vancouver and Winnipeg is legit. I know Mark Scheifele's injured, but if he, just to put him in there for record, first line for the Jets, Velarde, Scheifele, Kyle Connor, second line, now Sean Monahan, your boy Cole Perfetti, and Nikolai Ehlers. And then you've got your captain, Adam Lowry, and that third line of Nino Niederreiter and Mason Appleton, which is just a big boy line there.
Big boy line.
This is a great top 9 for the Winnipeg Jets. And again, look at what's happened after you move on from Pierre-Luc Dubois. Like, there was so much going on in the locker room, behind the bench. You get rid of him. Everything seems to be great now. You sign Connor Hellebuck, you sign Mark Scheifele, and you make this trade for Sean Monahan, who's been playing his best hockey since 3 years ago. So This is great news for the Winnipeg Jets. Again, not a lot of options out there for top 6 centermen, but the 2 top names probably in Elias Lindholm and Sean Monahan get taken out right away by 2 Western Canadian clubs who are going all in this season, and rightfully so. And their team chemistry and the way that their lineup is now filling out and looking is just unbelievable. Gabriel Velarde, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari, obviously, in that trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois, have been getting going since they've joined the team as well. But a lot of this, we talk about the forwards, we talk about the defensive end. A lot of this is going to ride on both Thatcher Demko and Connor Hellebuck when it comes to playoff time. We know goaltenders can really be the game changer and enforcer to take their team all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And it, as much as it is, as much as I don't like the Winnipeg Jets as a team, it is great to see, as a Canadian, see 2 Canadian hockey clubs who have legitimate chances to go on a deep run in the playoffs.
Most definitely. Hey, look, 71 points for the Vancouver Canucks, 65 points right now for the Winnipeg Jets. These moves are obviously going to bring value into their lineup and inject some energy into 2 clubs that are being rewarded by their front office staff for how they've been playing on the ice. And this fires up a dressing room, and I'm really intrigued to see what this is going to do to the peripheral pieces around the additions. Sean Monahan, if he does slot in there on that second line, which makes sense, Rasmus Kupari will probably drop down and take Dominic Donato's spot. Toninato. That fourth line's actually not bad either, Steele. Morgan Barron and Alex Iafallo with Rasmus Kupari in the middle. Don't hate it either, but here's my take for this from the Winnipeg angle, because you already mentioned it. I'm looking at what this can do for a young player in Cole Perfetti. Yeah. No disrespect to Rasmus Kupari, but Cole Perfetti could use a veteran centerman like that to dish him the puck and to show him how to get it done. So I want to see what this means for Nikolai Ehlers as well. And that chemistry, eyes peeled on Elias Lindholm for sure, because all of these things are going to mean impacts on the players around them as well, Steele. We got a lot more to talk about because the players we have on our lists all make an impact on a nightly basis. 6-1 top veterans in the fantasy game coming up around the break, but we got to give some love to FanDuel Sportsbook. Another shout out to everyone celebrating the Super Bowl weekend coming up from America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. If you're like us, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite snacks, and placing some super bets. Grab those chicken wings, dust off a couple of wobbly pops, and make sure you're busting open the FanDuel app. FanDuel has so many ways to make sure you end the season with a W or 2 or 3. You can bet on everything from who wins the big game, but also FanDuel has you covered on which players can score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today. Get $200 in bonus bets. Your first bet of $5 or more wins. Join FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Have you ever seen an NHL player get off a team bus and think to yourself, gosh, I wish I could dress that nice? Well, with Indochino, you can. Indochino makes fully customized suits that don't require a trip to the tailor to get that perfect fit. Recently, I was shopping for a new dress shirt for my upcoming wedding, and when I decided to go with the Hyde herringbone shirt, I was blown away at all the customization options I had. I could change the type of collar, cuffs, and even decide whether or not I wanted a chest pocket, all while being incredibly affordable, especially given the quality of the product I was getting. New colors, fabrics, and outerwear styles are added regularly too, so it's easy to create your next look. Level up your game with Indochino. Go to Indochino.com and use code NHL to get 10% off any purchase of $399 or more. That's 10% off at Indochino.com with code NHL.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. They are here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So make sure you go over there and subscribe to that channel. Subscribe to this one as well. Hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Before we continue on the conversation from yesterday's episode of the top 10 veterans in the NHL league, quickly just to wrap up Sean Monahan and his fantasy value. He's got 35 points in 49 games this year. He's shooting the puck a lot more than we've seen over the last 3 seasons, as well as he is only rostered at 20% on Yahoo right now. I talked about him either last week or 2 weeks ago for waiver wire targets, and now going from Montreal to Winnipeg, who, man, they are getting it done right now. I think his fantasy value is going to skyrocket, maybe closer up to 50% over the next 2 weeks. Once he gets the chemistry flowing with these guys over in Winnipeg. But moving forward with this conversation from yesterday, the top 10 veterans in the NHL right now, fantasy league wise, at number 6 for me, Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman Victor Hedman, 33 years old, having an absolutely monster year this season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And last year wasn't necessarily living up to the Hedman standard that we're used to getting. We know it wasn't his best year. Finished with 9 goals, 40 assists in 79 games. This season currently, he already has 9 goals and already more assists in 48 games. He has 41 assists, 9 goals for 50 points in 48 games this season. He's absolutely been stellar for them. A big shout out to Andrei Vasilevsky coming back from injury. You know, they're in a playoff spot now in top 3 in the Atlantic Division. He's got 101 shots, 58 blocks, 29 hits. Obviously a power play specialist at the quarterback position on the blue line. And that power play, I mean, there's just so many options to go to. Steven Stamkos, who I'm going to get to shortly. Nikita Kucherov on the right side. Braden Point, who fills in that slot position, and then whether it's Cirelli or Nicholas Paul in front of the net, grabbing those rebounds, that is an absolute deadly power play, top power play in the NHL right now. Victor Hedman quarterbacking the way, though. For me, he comes in at number 6.
I'm so glad that you bring up Victor Hedman. And to me, he deserves to be higher on this list, but this isn't an egregious error. He should be for sure in the top 10, and in my opinion, in the top 5. I'll talk about him in a second, but interesting because I got these odds up still. He's right now paying plus 3,000 as the 5th favorite to win the Norris. Obviously, Quinn Hughes and Makar deserve to be ahead of him. I'm just saying he's perennially in the top 3, I believe, 7 straight seasons, including winning it.
Always in the conversation.
He was in the top 3 in Norris voting. Yeah, he had that bit of a blip last year, but that was only because we're holding him to his extremely high standards, because 49 points from a blue liner is still excellent. But I hear you, and I respect the take. I'll talk about him a little bit more in a second. You spoke about Alex Ovechkin yesterday. All the angles are covered. Everyone knows Ovi's having a down year. 9 goals, 31 points. It's not Ovi-like. It's not even close to Ovi-like. And you mentioned the takes yesterday, so I'm going to keep this one short and sweet about his draft position. A lot of people still valuing him in that top elite tier, which I think is starting to fade.
Yeah.
But he earned this spot based on reputation and based on that shot alone. And I think you'll see him still return to his form in some sense. I don't think he'll ever go back to that 50 goal a season pace, but I could still see him popping 30 a year. It's just really been a struggle for him. And I'll bring up this point lastly. No disrespect to Dylan Strome or Tom Wilson, but Alex Ovechkin needs some help. Yeah. Washington only has, and this is my last point on this deal, and I know he's been struggling, and I'm not going to just throw his teammates under the bus, but they are only on top of the San Jose Sharks by 6 total goals and the Chicago Blackhawks by 8 for the least scored in the NHL this year. That's embarrassingly bad. And clearly the lack of talent around Ovi at 38 years old is playing a factor, because I'm telling you, throw someone else in there. I don't even know who, but anybody else, I'm telling you, he has 20 instead of 10. So that's my take on it. He deserves to be on this list. He's at number 6 for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a different looking Washington Capitals club. I know John Carlson came back from that really nasty injury just last season. But that's not going to be the biggest difference maker here. He's playing with a lot of new players, younger players as well. He doesn't have his boy Backstrom. It's just not the same looking Washington Capitals over the last 5 years for Alex Ovechkin. And it's really, you can see it with his teammates and the way he's playing right now. So he's going to need a little bit more help if they want any chance getting into the postseason. At number 5, though, this player already has all the help. And I just talked about his defenseman partner over there, Victor Hedman. Steven Stamkos comes in at number 5 for me, 33 years old, 13 out of 16 seasons. He's been a point per game player. He's got a career average 16.7 shooting percentage. He's currently shooting at 14.6 this season. So it's a little bit down from his average, but it's been his bread and butter, his consistency there. 21 goals, 47 points in 47 games. There have obviously been those few seasons where the injuries got the better of him, but he's also played 12 full-length seasons, 77-plus games or more. He's been fully healthy the last 3 years when he's put up 237 points in 209 games. Obviously, I just said about the power play with Victor Hedman. He is absolutely lethal on the power play, just like Kucherov, Braden Point, and his boy Hedman over there on the blue line. Like we like to say, he posts up in Ovi's office, as we like to call it, and he's just waiting. He's just waiting for a pristine pass from either Kucherov or Victor Hedman. And you put it in his wheelhouse, he's scoring pretty much every single time. He's got one of the best slap shots, probably, in my opinion, right behind Alexander Ovechkin. So Steven Stamkos, for me, he makes it at number 5. He's just one of those veterans. Again, when he's healthy and he consistently stays healthy, he's got to be a top 2, top 3 draft pick, in my opinion.
I can't talk enough about how much I like Steven Stamkos, both on and off the ice. If I'm building a franchise, a leader, a point getter, a clutch performer, and a winner, and a guy who just really seems to bleed for his teammates, I want Steven Stamkos in there. I'm building a franchise around him all day. Let me bring this up quickly, Steele, because he's also at number 5 for me. So this is neat and tidy. In 123 career postseason games, 95 points, 6 game winners.
Unreal.
This guy is an absolute stud who I don't think gets nearly enough credit somehow. I'm not going to say underrated, but I'm going to say he deserves a lot more credit for what he's done over the course of his career. He has 2 Rocket Richard trophies still. And I remember when he came into the league after the year in Sarnia, he put up 105 points in 60 games in the O and went first overall. And I think his first year in the NHL, he only scored let me bring this up. I think it was 50 points. And everyone was kind of, ooh, maybe he didn't deserve to go first overall. And then he came back the next season and blew the doors off the NHL. So this guy definitely deserves to be on this list. What's his age? He's 33 years old. Good Markham, Ontario lad. Shout out to Steven Stamkos. Shout out to Markham as well. He deserves to be on this list still. And I'm loving that my top 5 all are winners. So, well, except for the next guy. But anyway, I'm loving this angle. Who you got it for? Because our top 5 is going to be very similar.
Yeah, I think it will be. Well, at number 4, I believe he was just outside the top 5 for you, or maybe he was 9th if I'm remembering correctly. But at number 4, real quickly, I've got Roman Josi, 33 years old defenseman from Nashville.
Yeah, he was
Predators.
10th for me.
Still one of the most elite defensemen in the NHL. I love this player when I'm able to draft him, and I haven't talked about him a lot this season because I wasn't able to draft him in any of the fantasy leagues that I'm in. But he is still one of the best fantasy hockey defensemen on the market. 10 goals, 45 points in 51 games, 18 power play points, 165 shots, 93 blocks, 31 hits, 25 penalty minutes. He fills all of the categories that you need as a fantasy hockey defenseman. If a player can put up points on a pace like this with consistently producing in every other category, it's a recipe for success. I talked about this this recipe with JT Miller. He puts up points. He fills up all the other categories. Roman Josi does the same thing, but as a defenseman. He's top 22 in fantasy points among all NHL players. He's 4th best fantasy defenseman, right behind Cale Makar, Noah Dobson, and Quinn Hughes. And he's not even that far off from Quinn Hughes, who has 17 more points and 5 more power play points than a Roman Josi this year. That speaks to the volumes of the other categorical points that you can get from a player who gets the blocks, hits, and the shots on net. He has less than 4 fantasy points away from the top 3 position. And if he continues on this stride, he can even put himself above Quinn Hughes, who's still in obviously the front runner, or right there as a front runner with Cale Makar for the Norris Trophy. But Roman Josi as a fantasy hockey defenseman is absolutely elite.
I agree totally. And I think that's why maybe the lists that we did today, sometimes that's when you and I were trying to split fantasy and the on-ice quality and their ability to bring winning caliber to their clubs. And that's why Victor Hedman is way ahead of Roman Josi on my list. But I'm not going to disagree with you also, just for fun. On the odd side of things, Roman Josi right now for the Norris is paying plus 7,500 behind Rasmus Dahlin, Charlie McAvoy, and Adam Fox. So if you really want to get spicy with a toonie, maybe chuck it on Steele's boy Roman Josi here. I'm going to talk about the bread man right after the break, Steele, because he is at number 4 on my list. Let's talk about it and finish this bad boy up with a bow.
Finish it up with a bow, indeed. This episode is brought to you by Factor. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, the prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your doorstep. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks, and more to keep me going no matter what's on the schedule. Not only does Factor offer fast, simple solutions when I'm too busy to cook, they also help me stay on top of my goals. With offerings like Protein Plus and Keto, I can stay on track. This is definitely going to come in handy for my New Year resolutions. Factor has everything I need for a week of flavorful and nutritious meals. In addition to ready-to-eat meals, they have cold-pressed juices, smoothies, energy bites, extra protein, veggie sides, and more to keep me energized during frantic times. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. That's code LockedOnNHL50 at factorsmeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off.
Hey everyone, Chris from Locked On Avalanche here. If you like using debit over credit, I just learned about something that's definitely a game changer. Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases, which means you can get cash back on NHL tickets or head-to-toe hockey gear to make this season a total win. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us every single day. Flip, over to you, my friend. Number 4 on the list, the Bread Man.
Yeah, Artemi Panarin is one of those players that I think maybe at the start of his career, everyone was like, what can he do without Patrick Kane? Obviously, joining the Chicago Blackhawks at a relatively late age, starting in the NHL at 24. He's only 32 and has 727 points in 639 career regular season games. And I'm pretty sure of everyone on this list, I believe currently he is leading all of them in points this season with 66. So when you look at maybe that pure fantasy side of it, Steele, he might be higher up this list. But we're talking about some of the players ahead of him that have multiple Stanley Cup rings, multiple trophies in their mantle. And I know he was a Calder winner. He's a 3-time All-Star. He's not a win winner yet. And that's the only angle that I could poke in Panarin's game, because otherwise, power play specialist. He can find his teammates blindfolded in the parking lot with his passing. I love his creativity and his ice time. He's playing over 20 minutes in ice time for the first time in a long time. I think he's just starting to get going. This New York Rangers team has all of the pieces to go on a deep cup run. I think he needs to be one of those players that takes his game to an entire another level. And I know that's a lot to ask considering where he's at, but that's the kind of leadership and game I need to see from him to be higher up this list. But with all of that said, there are few back to the fantasy side of things, there are few fantasy pieces that are this consistently good offensively. 87 points, 95 points, 96 points, 92 points. This guy is a 100-point threat every single year, and he brings it on the power play. When it comes to offense and fantasy, not many guys as consistent as Panarin over the last 6 or 7 seasons.
Well, maybe I can try to persuade you to bump him up a couple of spots there, because I've got him at number 2, and I'll speak on him very, very shortly. But at number 3, I've got Brad Marchand of the Boston Bruins, 35, soon to be 36 years old. Like you said yesterday, you hate to see him play against you, but you would love when he's on your team.
For sure.
Been an absolutely incredible player throughout his whole career, but really started to hit his stride and hit another level in that 2016 season. He's 4 games away from playing his 1,000th NHL game, and he has 909 points. So he's had a really, really incredible career in the NHL, won Stanley Cup as well. 47 points in 49 games this year, 51 penalty minutes, 131 shots, 22 blocks, 49 hits. Brad Marchand, in my opinion, is the epitome of a game changer. He can score goals. He's an antagonizer. He's an enforcer. He's a goal scorer. He's a playmaker. He's a leader for this club. But again, if he's not doing one thing, he's doing something else to get himself into the game and get his club going. He is a game changer, in my opinion. And he also has, I don't even know how to describe it. He just has incredible stick work when he doesn't have the puck. I don't know if you saw that highlight from a week or so ago, but the puck was going through the defender's skates and he was trying to get it, and he was just quickly lifting his stick up, slashing it away, and he just went hard to the net and scored a beauty of a goal. So Brad Marchand, he is a game changer. He's an enforcer. He does it all for the Boston Bruins, and he's been a big reason why they've still been so successful with the departure of Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci.
He is also one of those players, and it's obviously hard to predict, and it's nothing that you can actually plan on happening, but it will happen, is Brad Marchand goes off for like 2 or 3 points, 20 penalty minutes, and you win your matchup for the week because he went off both on offense and with his lips. So again, not one of those tangible things that you can exactly bank on, but it's one of those things that he brings a peripheral value in fantasy, and he backs up his talk. I said that at length on yesterday's episode, and I don't need to break it down again because Brad Marchand is a very big reason that this Boston Bruins team has been not one of the most successful, the most successful over the last number of years, including a Stanley Cup. So that's all that needs to be said. I can't even argue with you that you have him this high on your list when I had him at 7, because we're all on the same page in this one. Veterans bringing fantasy value. Number 3 for me, Steele, Victor Hedman and I mentioned those numbers for Steven Stamkos in the postseason. How about for a defenseman in the postseason, Steele, for Victor Hedman? In 160 postseason games, he has 110 points. And for a defenseman, 6 game-winning goals in the postseason. Somebody throw some respect on this guy's name, even more so, and I know he's properly rated. I'm not going to go out there and say Victor Hedman is underrated, because there was a number of years in a row, and maybe if he continues to play like this, he will be the number 1 fantasy option in hockey. He is right up there for sure. I know Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar are in that conversation because of the elite level fantasy or elite level offensive production they're bringing, but Victor Hedman deserves to be in that conversation most definitely, in my opinion. He's number 3. He's got 2 cups, 6 All-Stars, the Norris, and how about a Conn Smythe as well?
Yeah, absolutely, exactly what you just said. Victor Hedman,
and you covered it.
I covered it, and again, if we're going more Stanley Cup wise and accomplishments and awards, he's higher on the list, but I'm focusing a little bit more on the fantasy side of things. But he's having an unreal season, a monster season for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Big lad too, 6'7".
Big lad, man. The guy's an absolute Viking. It's insane. He's massive. But
just look at his photo on Hockey Reference. It looks like he's like staring into my soul here. Anyway,
what's his nickname? Hetty? Is his nickname
Hetty? And Harry. I love these nicknames. They
figured.
drive me wild. But anyway, who are you got at number 3? Is it Breadman? Or you got him at 2?
At number 3, I had Brad Marchand. At number 2, I've got the Breadman, 32-year-old Breadman, Artemi Panarin. And this is what I've been waiting for from Panarin over the last 3 years.
Sure.
Shoot the damn puck. And he's finally doing that this season. He's got unbelievable hands and an incredible shot when he decides to use it. But for the first 8 years in the National Hockey League, he was only hitting the net anywhere from 170 to 230 shots a year, which wasn't enough for me. He now currently has 194 shots in 49 games. This is a player who can consistently put the puck on net every single season over 300 times and score 30-plus goals when he wants to. And I understand he's more of a playmaker. Like you said, he can pass the puck blindfolded, hit you tape to tape. He's a pass-first kind of guy. But when you have his capabilities, sometimes you have to have the shoot-first mentality, and that's what he's finally doing this season. He has, and I want to go down the list a little bit. You said it yourself. He has 2 70-plus point seasons, 2 80-plus point seasons, 3 90-plus point seasons. And the year that COVID first happened, he was on pace for 113 points. He's currently on pace for 110 points. He might not have won yet, but all this guy does is produce points up front offensively. 727 career NHL points in 639 games. He is a point getter. He's a producer, and he does it all. That's why they call him the Breadman.
Hey, can't disagree. And look, I just need to see him get it done in the postseason and win. I'm not saying point-wise. That's just the angle I was placing more of an emphasis on. That's just me. Fantasy-wise, you could make an argument that he's maybe at the top of this list, perhaps. I don't know. But you know who's at the top of my list. And I have Evgeni Malkin at number 2. And I'll just lump this conversation in together because it's Sid. I'm reading a book about Sid right now, Steele. Number 87 for a player not wearing blue and white. He's probably my favorite ever. And for obvious reasons. This is a player, and just to talk about Crosby in a second, and Evgeni Malkin, I think they are there together for a reason. 3 cups. This is a dynasty steal, in my opinion. Evgeni Malkin led the league in scoring twice, 113 points and 109 in 2009 and 2012. I know that was a long time ago. But this season, 40 points in 46 games, he can still get it done. And I know the window for winning is shrinking rapidly in Pittsburgh. But I'll tell you this. If Tristan Jarry can catch a little bit of fire, I believe he is more than capable enough to be a goaltender to take a team on a run. They've got Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang. We know it's the balance. Can this team add at the deadline? I don't know. But how can you not ignore the ability of those 2 guys? And Crosby at number 1 is clear cut. And I know you got me on that one because you have him there too. But these 2 guys are winners. And when you get them in the postseason, if they do get there, it's a big if. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't think there's a single team in the Eastern Conference that wants to take on a motivated Sid and Gino at one of their last kicks at the can. It doesn't matter how good the regular season went down. If this Pittsburgh club squeaks in steel, I don't want to be the team to face them at number one, because Sidney Crosby is doing special things once again, and I'll close it off with this because we're getting long on the tooth. 3 cups, 2 Art Rosses, 3 Pearsons, 2 Rocket Richards, 2 Conn Smythes, 2 Hart trophies, and a 9-time All-Star. Put this guy right in the Hall of Fame as one of the best to ever do it, and that's a hands-down fact.
It is a hands-down fact, and I'm not really going to go in depth on any of this. I just want one thing to say, because I have Sidney Crosby at number 1. I don't have Malkin at number 2, but the last thing I want to say about Sidney Crosby is this guy's backhand is better than most players' front hand. It is absolutely incredible what he is able to do from different positions all over the ice, and really just elevate his teammates to another level, or even put them on his level at a consistent pace. So for me and yourself, and maybe for a lot of people out there, Sidney Crosby, 36 years old, Sid the Kid, continues to get it done. And it might be one of the last kicks at the cans for them if they can get into the postseason, but it's not going to be one of the last seasons we see Sidney Crosby in the National Hockey League. He's got a lot of hockey left in him. NHL All-Star break coming up this weekend. Make sure you're tuning in for the NHL All-Star in Toronto. Thank you so much for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports today. They've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. They are here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great weekend. Good luck with all your bets out there if you have any. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Shout out to Cole Harbor. Peace.
At Amica Insurance, we know it's more than just a car. It's the 2-door coupe that was there for your first drive, the hatchback that took you cross-country and back, and the minivan that tackles the weekly carpool. For the cars you couldn't live without, trust Amica Auto Insurance. Amica. Empathy is our best policy.
Hey, Prime members, you can listen to this Locked On podcast ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today.